There is no medium quite like the wonderful world of video games. In any other art form, a botched release, a bad story, or terrible delivery would instantly sink your product. There are no day one patches, no content updates, or graphical improvements. You just make it and then you're finished. With all this stuff in mind, video games are in a unique situation where death and that launch day kerfuffle doesn't mean it's the end. Some of the best games this generation didn't start life out as success stories. Some were released broken, unplayable, or just simply empty husks where promises were made but not kept. At the same time, critically successful games have the chance to develop and improve to keep themselves relevant in an ever-changing ecosystem. If developers and publishers are willing to put the effort in, then that release day death knell doesn't have to ring forever. I'm Scott from WhatCulture.com, and these are 10 video games that came back from the dead. Number 10, FORTNITE. Yes, it might seem like a weird inclusion today, but back at the beginning, FORTNITE was dead on arrival. The game went to beta as a PvE experience. Players would group together to fight hordes of enemies whilst building their bases with elaborate traps and other safety devices. The game looked absolutely fine, but horde mode had already had its day, and FORTNITE didn't present anything drastically new other than just a child-friendly aesthetic. Soon, however, video games' cultural impact would be changed forevermore. Epic Games saw the meteoric rise of PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, a PC-exclusive battle royale game, absolutely tearing up the video game landscape. FORTNITE then soon became not only the only vehicle for Battle Royale available on console, but it was free and boasted a significantly more polished product with a bolder, aesthetically pleasing art style. FORTNITE completely exploded, not only in the video game world, but into the psyche of culture worldwide. You just can't look around now without seeing some sort of FORTNITE memorabilia, references to the game in popular media, or just a bunch of dads attempting to floss to look cool. No, Jules, you don't need to do it every time you enter the office. Number 9, RuneScape. RuneScape was a cultural phenomenon in the mid to late 2000s. The free-to-play MMORPG offered a credible alternative to World of Warcraft, with a huge world to explore and many skills to level up. RuneScape continued to be supported, with graphics updates and including quality-of-life improvements such as the Grand Exchange in 2007. Still, this couldn't stop the inevitable drop in players when the MMORPG bubble started to deflate at the start of this decade. Ingeniously, developers Jagex went to the community to see what they wanted. This was what led them to release old-school RuneScape in 2013. This version of the game ran separately to the modern version and presented itself as a stripped-down, back-to-basics approach to the game overall, without all the graphics and gameplay improvements. Soon, people returned looking to recapture their youth and return to the world of Gailanor. Jagex ensured the survival of RuneScape. To this day, old-school RuneScape still has over 100 active servers, facilitating up to 2,000 players. This attempt to go back to the old school was welcomed with open arms so much, MMORPG giant Blizzard emulated it with WoW Classic. Number 8, Sea of Thieves. A recurring theme for this list will be games that didn't live up to their pre-release hype, as Sea of Thieves is a notable high-profile example. Before the release of Sea of Thieves, there were countless press releases and hands-on impressions of the game. It was being touted as truly open world, with tons of treasure to plunder, skeletons to kill, and an open PvP world to sail across, with danger around every corner. Upon release, though, we were greeted with treasure to plunder and pirates to murder, but not a whole lot else. In the end, Rare had done so much right, the world was stunning, and sailing with your friends was a genuine delight. But the gameplay loop just wasn't there. It wasn't fun to dig up treasure after treasure, only to have it stolen by sneaky pirates. Almost overnight, or within a couple of weeks, most players had dropped off due to boredom. Rare then had to steady their own ship. Throughout the first year of release, Rare released free updates to make the experience more tantalizing and addictive. By the time the anniversary update had released, pirates had the ability to sail solo, battle krakens and megalodons, take part in designated PvP battles in the arena, and dive headfirst into a scripted narrative. Sea of Thieves has finally delivered on its promise and is now not only a beautiful game, but a fun, recommendable one to match. Number 7, Tom Clancy's The Division. Tom Clancy's The Division opened with a bang. Becoming Ubisoft's best-selling game, it generated an eye-watering $330 million worldwide. The game received favorable reviews and was praised for its solid enough campaign and brilliant third-person action. If the series was a linear story experience with this in mind, that would be happy days. However, it was meant to be Ubisoft's answer to the shared world shooter experience, then being dominated by Destiny. The problem, though, was that The Division was barren. Once you'd blasted through the story, players didn't find an awful lot left to do. The level cap was a woeful 30, the guns available were exactly the same but made the numbers go up, and the area known as the Dark Zone became a PvP hellscape. Players started to trickle away and Ubisoft needed to do something to turn this around. Over the space of a few years, Ubisoft continued to support the division by releasing free post-game content. This not only fixed some of the bugs plaguing the game, but provided new gadgets, gear, and areas to explore, such as Falcon Lost and the survival game mode. Soon enough, people started to find their way back to the world of the Division, and when Ubisoft announced a sequel, there was plenty of hype for another installment in the franchise. Number 6. Final Fantasy XIV: A Realm Reborn. By 2010, the MMORPG market had become incredibly saturated. Blizzard released Cataclysm, a giant expansion on the already popular World of Warcraft. There were free outings from the previously mentioned RuneScape and Guild Wars, alongside a host of other universes to explore, from Star Trek to LEGO. To break into this market was always going to be difficult, so Square Enix created an MMORPG set in the world of the most popular JRPG series of all time, and it should have been a no-brainer. By the time the original Final Fantasy XIV was released in 2010 though, the game had already been through development hell, having been in production for over 5 years. On its eventual release, the game bombed. Though Final Fantasy XIV was beautiful, it just didn't run properly. Environments were reused and the gameplay was appalling. Not 2 years later, the servers appeared to be permanently closed. This prompted Square Enix to hire a completely new team and start from scratch. In 2013, Final Fantasy XIV: A Realm Reborn was released to the public, with favourable reviews thanks to decent gameplay and stunning visuals. 6 years later, the team are still fully supporting the game, with their third story expansion Shadowbringers releasing back in July 2019. Number 5. Diablo 3. Diablo has always been a beloved franchise. Blizzard's dungeon crawlers are packed full of monsters to fight with your friends, and countless treasures and weapons to chase down in a seemingly endless gameplay loop. It would take something truly catastrophic to put all of that goodwill under pressure. When Diablo 3 was released in 2012 though, something catastrophic happened. Blizzard was seemingly not ready for the amount of traffic Diablo 3 was going to receive. So at launch, many players were met with the now infamous Error 37. Servers, it appeared, just couldn't cope. Players were either unable to log into the game or were booted as soon as they did. This would have only been a minor setback had it not been for the fact that Diablo 3 required network connectivity to play. Players had spent $60 on something they just couldn't play, and they were not impressed. And all of this was not the end of Blizzard's headache. The real money auction house, where players could buy the most sought-after gear for in-game gold or real cash, became another blight on the game. Eventually, Blizzard acted. They made the servers a lot more stable and soon took down the real money auction house. This and a bunch of content improvements, seasonal rewards, and constant technical support soon ironed out these glaring issues and left the much-loved game we know today in its place. Number 4. Destiny 2. Not many franchises can come back from the dead, let alone twice. Destiny 2 has still managed to remain relevant even after such high-profile blunders. By the end of Destiny 1, Bungie had managed to finally live up to the pre-release promises and make Destiny a truly shared world experience. There was plenty of content for all types of players, from complicated raids to incredibly tense PvP. When Destiny 2 was announced, players were excited to get improvements in their experience, further diving into their role as a Guardian. What players received, though, was a watered-down experience designed to attract a more casual player. The content was stripped back considerably, and though the story campaign was a lot better, i.e. it actually had cutscenes and characters, the endgame was nearly non-existent. Troubles were made even worse when paid DLC Curse of Osiris and Warmind didn't add anything to the experience other than extra story content. Now, there is nothing wrong with making a game attractive for new and casual players, and it certainly makes sense financially. But Destiny was kept alive by its devoted fanbase who stuck through the vanilla original experience, and it was a lot to ask them to go through it all again. After a whole bunch of feedback, Bungie decided to take serious action. With the release of another game-saving DLC called Forsaken, the endgame was vastly improved and a whole new game mode called Gambit was released. Going forward, Bungie cut ties with corporate publisher Activision to hopefully avoid another profit-over-customer situation with their future releases. Only time will tell whether Bungie can reclaim the sort of prolific stature that they used to have around the Halo period, but at least we finally have faith again. Number 3. Street Fighter V. Street Fighter has been a fan favorite for over 30 years. The franchise has a deep tradition of tight controls that are easy to learn and hard to master, alongside colorful characters and locations to battle. This all changed though with the release of Street Fighter V. When fighting enthusiasts finally got their hands on Street Fighter V in 2016, fans were met with a broken game with very few features. Load times were appalling, the opening roster was woefully small for a modern fighting game at 16 characters, and worst of all, the game shipped without a bunch of key features, ranging from multi-person lobbies and combo trials through to oversights like CPU versus modes and a franchise mainstay arcade mode. Though the mechanics were there and the online versus mode worked well enough, the average fan just had nothing else to do. Capcom then decided to set Street Fighter V up as a game as a service, providing a paywall for new content such as characters and skins. You could grind your way through this additional content, but there was so little for the average player to focus on, it only made sense to throw money at the game to try and make it enjoyable. And of course, this was on top of a $60 release cost. Capcom were soon forced to fix their errors. Further free releases such as a more fleshed out story mode and those missing core features, alongside bigger DLC packages that feel like value for money, finally restored Street Fighter back to the top of both the fighting game pile, competitively and casually. Number 2, Rainbow Six Siege. In the world of modern video games, staying power is everything. The games as a service model is big business and can provide a constant fountain of revenue if done right. No other game this generation quite embodies this mantra like Rainbow Six Siege. When it was first announced that the new Rainbow Six was going to be an online competitive-only game, people were pretty cautious. The franchise was built on fantastic campaigns with even better protagonist names, such as the immortal Dink Chavez. When Siege was released early 2015, fans and critics were delighted with a polished co-op shooter experience with genuinely tense and exciting gameplay. The problem, though, was that there wasn't a whole lot there. 2015 was a time when online loot boxes were particularly perverse. In a game where the main thing you're chasing is rare loot and skins, locking them behind a paywall doesn't incentivize players to continue the grind. Soon enough, the player base started to fall apart. Ubisoft then set to work securing the longevity of the franchise. Countless updates, specialists, skins, and locations released through free and paid-for DLC. The loot box system was adjusted to make the balance seem fairer, and Siege became a must-watch esports spectacle. Nearly 5 years on, the Rainbow Six Siege name has never been stronger or more connected with turning a project around. Number 1, No Man's Sky. Never in video game history has there been such a dramatic reversal of perception and opinion. No Man's Sky was a hype train nobody was ever going to stop. Sony had thrown the full weight of their marketing team behind Hello Games, and ambitions and promises were sky high. What we got at release, though, was barely any of that, and that's coming from someone who still loved what they put out. When the game was released in 2016, it was a shell of what the wider public expected. The procedurally generated universe definitely felt massive, but the promised battles, run-ins with unique NPCs, and eventually other players never materialized. What players were greeted with was a pleasant enough zoologist walking simulator. The game was fine, but not finished. What followed was severe customer backlash. Refunds were being demanded and given across all platforms. The whole of Hello Games went into lockdown. All the signs were there that No Man's Sky was in meltdown and would soon go away altogether. What happened, however, was the complete opposite. Over the next 3 years, Hello Games continued to innovate the game and support the small community that fell in love with their universe. All of this for free. No slap-in-the-face DLC costs or hidden transactions. Just honest, hard work, world-building free updates. And they were nowhere near simple additions. By the release of the No Man's Sky Synthesis update in 2019, some of what's in the game now includes base building, social hubs, rideable animals, deep-sea diving, new ship types, and a ton more. No Man's Sky reinvented itself almost completely. The debacle of its release has been forgotten, and what's left is a remarkable game. Very much the thing that they advertised in the first place, plus loads of additional features. And that is my rundown of 10 video games that refuse to die. Let me know your favorites down in the comments below, and don't forget to check out the WhatCulture Gaming Podcast. For now, I've been Scott from WhatCulture.com, and I'll catch you soon.